Why would you need to erase General Mark Milley if you're Donald Trump?
Because I'm petty, because I'm all about fealty and loyalty to myself and doesn't understand loyalty to the Constitution. That's why. I mean, welcome to Germany, 1933. I mean, you know, he's trying to intimidate members of the military, like Mark Milley, to be subservient to him and, you know, and not stand up and not fight and defend the Constitution of the United States versus fight and defend him. That's what he wants. This is a shameless political act of retribution. I mean, so much for Pete Hegseth's assurances to get politics out of the military and focus on a warrior culture. I mean, the first thing he did was a political act of retribution on behalf of Donald Trump, going after one of the greatest warriors that this country has ever produced. I mean, Mark Milley was an incredible soldier, scholar, statesman who served in the great tradition of George C. Marshall. And it's just so sad to see the Marshall Corridor now is devoid of his painting. I mean, but he was an American patriot who sacrificed so much. A Princeton grad, he could have gone on to make all kinds of big bucks on the outside, but no, he served. He picked a life of selfless service to our nation. He served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia, Panama, Korea. I mean, get on and on. 4 Bronze Stars, for crying out loud. Commanded the 10th Mountain Division, one of our most storied divisions in the United States. He sacrificed so much for 44 years, and to see him treated like this, I mean, it's just reprehensible. I mean, we're not talking about national security here. We're not talking about the war in Iraq, or excuse me, in Ukraine or Gaza. We're not talking about building relationships with key allies or protecting Americans from, you know, terrorists. No, we're talking about an act of retribution on behalf of Donald Trump, and it's just shameful.
It is an act Paul Rieckhoff carried out in the name of the American people. Pete Hegseth's salary is paid by the taxpayer. He was confirmed by the United States Senate, the first Secretary of Defense ever to be opposed by bipartisan senators. I think that is the history that he made. He had opposition from the Democratic Party in total and 3 Republicans. And one of his first acts is to carry out a retribution campaign against a fellow soldier. It shouldn't boggle my mind. I'm embarrassed that I can still be horrified by anything that Trump does, but I'm horrified.
This is what we predicted and warned could happen. It's disgusting, it's dishonorable, it's damaging, and it's deeply dangerous. Just on a very basic national security basis, if you send a message to the world that we will not protect the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, our enemies are celebrating. He has protection because the Iranians want to kill him, right? That's part of it. But then there's also the threat from extremist groups. There's any number of threats from a lone wolf. The president himself knows that because he was shot this past summer. So the chairman of the Joint Chiefs should have security. All chairmen of the Joint Chiefs should have it, just like cabinet secretaries need it, because if they don't, they are a trophy for our enemies, and they have security value that is immeasurable. But it's also more than just erasing history. They're trying to erase opposition. What they're saying in the first couple of days is if you oppose us, we will come for you, we will make an example of you, and we can even get the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And if we can get him, what message does that send to cascade across the entire military? They are setting a tone, and the tone is of loyalty and fealty and obligation, and to put that above anything else. And if you cross us, this is what happens.
Courtney, let me just come back to the Iranian threat. I mean, from the outside, the thing that stitches 3 of the 4 people that we have learned Trump stripped security from, Pompeo, Bolton, and Milley, is the stated public threat to assassinate everyone involved in the Soleimani strike. Are you aware of any? I mean, what did Pompeo, and the reason I list that group of 3 is I don't know anyone that understands what it is that Pompeo did to make Trump angry. What is the answer inside the Pentagon for how to protect people who carried out a commander-in-chief's order? At the end of the day, it was Trump's order to carry out the strike that killed Soleimani. What is the military's response to leaving people who were simply following an order from the commander-in-chief exposed to threats, not just of violence, but of an assassination from Iran?
I have to say, there are a number of people who were involved in the Soleimani strike who are still and have a very real active threat against them from Iran who have not been touched by this. And, you know, just ethically, I don't think it's fair to name them here at this point. But there are a number of people who have not that had their security pulled. And I don't really understand exactly what this is. I think that part of the reason that General Milley was targeted here is the comments that he made that you highlighted at the top, Nicole. But also, remember, there are people who have come into this administration, including the Secretary of Defense and others who are very close to Donald Trump, still want there to be someone who is held accountable for the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Remember, one of the major faces of that for the United States military was General Mark Milley. You'll recall that even after the strike occurred in Kabul that ended up killing an aid worker, a civilian aid worker, and his family, remember, General Milley initially, as the chairman, came out and defended that strike before we later found out that it was an errant strike, that it was a terrible mistake that killed these innocent civilians, including a number of children. So General Milley is one of the people who still is seen as one of those who is directly involved in that, who should potentially be held accountable. And keep in mind, Nicole, he's someone who they can do that. Being a retired military officer, a general officer, there is always the possibility that someone who serves as a general officer, Paul Rieckhoff would know this very well, so would a retired general, they know very well that an administration can reach in, bring them back on active duty, and hold them accountable in a military court of justice if that is seen. So General Milley is one of the ones who is just frankly accessible for them to go after about something like Afghanistan too, Nicole.